Welcome to the Not Finished Mindset podcast, where we dive deep into the relentless pursuit of growth, resilience, and pushing beyond limits. This isn't just another podcast, it's a lifestyle. Whether you're an entrepreneur, athlete, or everyday warrior, we're here to remind you that the journey is never over and the best is yet to come. Get ready to challenge the status quo, break through barriers, and ignite the mindset that says, I'm not finished. I've got more to grow. All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Not Finished Mindset podcast. Super excited today. We've got an awesome guest, a very interesting person with an awesome project that he's working on. We've got Barak Argov. He is a husband, a father, and owner of Always Barefoot, Hawaii's only barefoot shoe store. And we're going to get way more into that because it's a really awesome project that he's been working on and has seen a lot of awesome growth, I know already. So very excited to have you on. Barak, how you doing, brother?
I'm fantastic. I'm really excited to be here. And you yourself are a stand-up gentleman in so many ways. Every time I've had the privilege to run into you, you always feel even like just happier. So I'm very, very happy to speak to you today, man.
Oh, dude, I appreciate that, man. Likewise, Teresa's always like, she knows when I run into you because I met you the first time. We'll talk a little bit about that, but since then it's been just really cool interactions, man, and a lot of stuff in common. And you are getting after it, man. So for those that don't know you though, I want to just kind of ask, who are you and where are you from, man? Barak.
It's an Israeli name, Barak. It comes also from the Arabic world, I'm sure, because we have Barack Hussein Obama. And that's
right.
More of a Muslim origins in his name. And Hebrew, Barak means lightning, or it just means like a flash. So if you have something shiny, something silver, and then you see a little flash off of it, then that's a Barak. It's a silver flash, but lightning itself is also Barakim. It's I saw a Barak. So we had a lightning Obama as a president for 8 years.
Huh.
My dad is originally from Israel,
that,
so that's where. Yeah, it's a neat little tidbit. I really like my name because it's just kind of cool. I even got a tattoo to match. Got the Hawaii style lightning tattoo. I don't know, kind of a
man. I like that. I could see it. I don't think I've ever noticed that though.
Yeah, it's always hidden.
Yeah,
my dad
I've always got the sleeveless thing running. So, man, too
sleeveless.
Cool.
What do you mean?
Well, I've usually got the tank top, but I don't know if I've seen you in outside of a t-shirt. So.
Oh, no, I'm always in t-shirt. Especially when you see me, I was in a professional capacity, so I haven't tanked up. Maybe one day it'd be cool to rock that. But the name is Israeli origins. My dad is originally from Israel. My whole dad's side of the family is over there. They're still safe right now, thank goodness. But my family has been taken out of the north because of all the action that's been happening. Totally a digression. But I grew up in Nebraska until the age of about 8, and then my family moved to Hawaii, which I grew up from 2001 until 2010. And then when I graduated high school in 2010, I went to Israel. Once I got to Israel, I started wearing the toe shoes. I've seen a toe shoe before. Yep. It's kind of just like, as to say where the whole barefoot thing started, that's essentially where it was from. So that's me. That's where that's the places I've been for the most part for the entirety of my life.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, and I'm also very glad that was something I wanted to ask is your family, how safe they are. So they've been pretty proactive in relocating as tensions heated up around the areas.
They don't really have a choice. I mean, it's just my family up in there by. It doesn't matter. It's just almost as north as you can go in the country. And then 60,000 people just have been out of their homes for over a year now because Hezbollah has been shelling since October 8th. And obviously the country wants to keep those people safe, which I'm glad they have been. They've been putting them up in hotels and whatever, but it's a rough situation.
Yeah, it absolutely is, brother. So I very glad to hear your wife and kids were able to come back safely from their trip. And I know that's a big sigh of relief, brother. And we're continuing to pray for that peace to come and for things to slow down.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Israel, is that professional background? Is that what were you doing after you graduated? What was the job over there in Israel?
So my parents suggested when I was 15 years old, so before I decided to go, that I go join the Israeli army, the IDF. It was kind of for character building purposes because I had gone I done my bar mitzvah there when I was 13 in Israel, in the north. And then the next year I went back for a month to just work. I worked in the grape fields with a bunch of people from Thailand, got in the back of trucks, and they would drive us down to the grape field. I was up at 4:30 in the morning, which as a teenager, that's rough. And my parents, I got a huge impression from that because when I came back, they have told me this story, as parents will tell their kids the same story multiple times. They told me many times that I was totally different. I was all kind of a snotty kid, completely obsessed with video games before I left. And then that 1 month happened and I came back and I was a new Barak, and they were just like, we need to send him back to Israel. So I think that was kind of where their thing was, where they were thinking when I was young to ask if I wanted to do the army, which I scoffed at the time when I was 15. But then as high school was coming to a close, it's not that I didn't want to go to college. I just didn't have an inkling of what I wanted to study. And it immediately grabbed me as like a really adventurous idea. Go to Israel, learn Hebrew, be close to my family on that side, go to the army, become a badass. Because there's a big, at least from what I've experienced, there's a kind of conception about the Israeli Defense Forces that they're a excellent force, and people have a good impression when they hear about them, unless whatever someone's against Israel, which is a different story. And they're right, because the Israeli Defense Forces are one of the most amazing armies in the world. Right. And so I went, and they make it very easy for anyone who has, especially a family with Israeli citizenship, but also if you're just Jewish, they make it very easy to immigrate there, because they are, that's the whole Zionist project, whether you agree with it or not. The idea is that, the Jews have a homeland. And so if you're deciding that you want to go to Israel, then they just make it super easy. And then I was there in the Israeli Defense Forces a year after I got there. Kind of just bored out of my mind. I wanted to be a Krav Maga instructor. I already knew, because I can't see in my left eye. I'm not sure if it's visible on the camera. Show everyone if they're curious. I have basically this kind of like white film over my eye, which is calcium that builds up once an eye had been damaged. And plenty of people have probably seen someone with an eye that looks similar. It very much looks like the villain from a movie. But the whole gist is that when the lens of the eye doesn't work anymore, then once too much light can get in, there's a natural adaptation to cover it up so that, you're not completely blinded, which I was when I was a kid. When I had the initial accident, you don't immediately have that calcium buildup. I was so light sensitive. It was really difficult. But anyway, I couldn't be a fighter. I couldn't be a infantry man in the Israeli Defense Forces, among other things. And one of those things was a Krav Maga instructor. Krav Maga is the self-defense martial art of the Israeli Defense Forces, which is essentially about how to, make the most damage in the smallest amount of time. Yeah. And instead I became a fitness instructor, which they also kind of gave me a hard time to do, but I was able to get it. But because my Hebrew was so limited, I didn't do as much as I could have. And so when I worked, and it was awesome. It was, a lot of fun doing the exercises, and people really like Americans in Israel. So even if my Hebrew wasn't great, most people understand English to some degree, and many can speak it. So I was always able to get by. But I was sitting in the desert for the whole time. It was just in a place called Bislav 17, just in the middle of the desert. And that was my service most of the time. After that, I got out and I got my degree in physical education. It was closer to exercise science, because there's only one institution in Israel at this moment that has anything to do with exercise science or real physical education. And because they need physical education teachers, that's what the degree is. But the majors that I chose were essentially all kinesiology and biomechanics based. And that kind of branched into what I'm doing today in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I can see how the body's function and supposed to function. Glad to hear a little bit more of the background, man. I didn't realize all that, and super cool, man. Your background got even cooler, brother. Even more well-rounded for this. So, yeah, dude.
Well, thanks, man.
That's awesome. So yeah, and so how we met was on the Barefoot front, but like most cool friendships was in line for Costco hot dog. At least we were after hot dog that day. I don't know. Were we all after pizza or hot dog? I don't know.
It's me, always a hot dog with me, so it had to be a hot dog.
Yeah. After you drop a few $100 at Costco, you got to treat yourself to a little hot dog, or before. We found that it's better to do the Costco hot dog before you go in, because then you spend less money. But you got to wait in the line. So yeah, it's lessons learned. But yeah, we met there a couple years ago now, almost, I think. And it
was a year. I've been here. I've been back on Hawaii for a year, but it feels like it's been a while. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. So you saw my Zero shoes, and you were like, "Hey, how do you like the Zeros?" I had the sandals on.
The
I call them the
Genesis.
Moses. I call them the Moses 5000s.
Moses,
So they're
Moses
they're
wishes he
super
had
cool.
something so great.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned them, and that was kind of how we started chatting, was on the barefoot shoes. So being the expert in that, owner of Always Barefoot, what is barefoot shoes, and how would you describe it? It's definitely a newer term. A lot of people are coming over to the light side, I'll say, of what they should be wearing on their feet. But what are barefoot shoes, man?
That's my favorite question to talk about. Barefoot shoes are shoes that are a shoe. I mean, we need a shoe to protect us from crap on the ground. There's all kinds of stuff that wants to stab us, get us dirty. If the asphalt's hot or if the snow is outside, that's not fun to be walking around on that kind of stuff. So you need to be protected. But most shoes are problematic. Barefoot shoes are the opposite of a normal shoe in that they're basically a glove. They're extremely, extremely flexible. They're wide so your toes can spread naturally. They're flat from the back to the front. They're very lightweight, and the soles are very thin. On this model here, which is a prototype of my very own model, the Cruiser, which is coming out here pretty soon, which you have the version 1, and I'm glad you're digging them. I mean, I hope you're digging them.
I love them, man. I love them. Yeah, they've been awesome. Those are an updated version of it.
Yeah, they're kind of the same. It's not too far off. It's the same kind of general design. The new one's going to be a little bit wider on the sides, but the sole's got this really neat design on it that I was able to design myself. So I'm getting worn down a little bit because I've been tearing them up and going all over the place. So we're going to get some more dynamic tread. But for people who like barefoot shoes, I've been wearing them for years and years. The first thing like I said, was the toe shoes. And that's about as barefoot as it gets, the toe shoes. There's no denying it. But this is a great in between because it can strike a balance between a little bit padded, wide, so there's no constrictions whatsoever, looks good enough. That's basically what people are trying to get at when they're going for barefoot shoes. Because a real thin sole like Vivo Barefoot, which is one of the leading brands of the barefoot world, multi-million-dollar company, past 100 million in revenue they're probably going to make this year. So I don't really know what their net worth is, but they're huge. Their soles are very, very thin, and some people just can't handle that. We should try and go as thin as possible. I love Vivo Barefoots, and I use them myself. But most of the time, people want a little bit more padding. So generally, when you wear barefoot shoes, your feet just aren't impeded. The simplest way, by selling this for almost half a decade now, to conceptualize what's important about something like this, because people can very easily either be dismissive or really kind of have the benefits go over their head, is I like to ask people, if you were going to put a glove on your hand that squeezed your fingers together, hold them backwards a little bit, put your wrist at this angle, and that's what you could deal with. Like, this was your day. That's all you had. You can still move the rest of your arms. You can do all this kind of stuff. It's like you're in these little weird karate hands going on. No one would agree to wear a glove that did that to their hand because we've all been using the full range of motion in our hands our whole life. The thing is, with your foot, 17% of all the joints in your entire body, if you lost 17% of all your money tomorrow, you would be devastated. They're exclusively in your feet. The moment that your feet are not bound, they are able to absorb shock via the plantar fascia and all kinds of other tissues. That we pronate and supinate. The foot gets longer and shorter. It does all these kind of dynamic movements that save the ankle from having to do a lot of extra work. Once we've, again, put ourselves into regular shoes, if we just put that in quotation marks, things like this, which we're all familiar with, your toes are locked into the air. They're smashed together in the front. The widest part of the human foot is supposed to be from the big toe to the pinky toe. I got some demonstrating on my hand. It's not the best way to demonstrate, but the way our toes are supposed to work is the widest part is supposed to be up here in the front. And then we do the opposite by squeezing the toes together. That causes lots of problems. And then looking back at the shoe, if your heel is elevated in any sense, even just a little bit, there's no benefit to that. And this is an open invitation to all of your listeners, anyone who ever would come by the store, then we'd get into the topic. If you can find one piece of evidence that there is any benefit to a heel drop right here in the back, where it's a little bit higher in the back than it is in the front, or a tight toe box where your toes are squeezed together like we were talking about, I will give you a free pair of shoes. This is an open offer to anyone who can find anything in the literature that points to a benefit over time in that scenario.
Completely agree with it, man. So my barefoot journey kind of started with I had a hippie friend of mine talking about barefoot shoes consistently, and at the time I was running 5 miles every day. That was my pace. Like I just wanted to stay consistent and always hit 5 miles no matter what. Some days were fast, some days were slow. I think I had a pair of Asics gel Noosas, and that was on probably my second or third pair just because I was racking up the miles with them. But one day, it was New Year's Day, 2022. I went off on my run and my buddy's voice was in my head enough, right? And it just, something said, go barefoot. So I pulled my socks and my shoes off and I carried them with me. I was like, all right, I'm going to run 1 mile of this 5 miles barefoot. And, I ended up like running the whole 5 miles barefoot. It was stupid in some senses, because, the bottom of my feet, I was running through, downtown New Braunfels, Texas and all that. But it was interesting. I came back, the bottom of my feet were destroyed, just blisters and all that stuff. But my ankles, my knees, my hips, there was no pain like what was happening on my other runs from wearing the heel drop and tight toe box.
Were you experiencing like a progressively worse kind of like dull ache in all of those joints, even when you weren't running?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was 100%. I'm 6'5", 245 right now. And I've had lower back issues and like the hip flexors and, just everything tight. But when you look at it, right, that cast you described, you're locked in with a heel drop. And so when you're not and you're standing, you're at an angle. And so that the Achilles tightens, the calves tighten, the hamstrings tighten, the glutes tighten, and therefore all that stuff is shorter and it starts pulling on your low back. That's what I kind of found and deduced to be the issue. And so it's crazy. I went from that to right away, like I'm in barefoot shoes now. I threw away, I'm from Texas, so cowboy boots, are a staple. I don't own a pair of cowboy boots. I've had probably 20 pairs throughout my lifetime, and I got rid of all my cowboy boots. Like I can't see myself putting on something that is purely for style whenever I realize I'm causing damage to my body long term. And I remember, like in school, we used to be taught about how Chinese culture, they bind women's feet because it's thought to be, a beautiful thing to have small feet. And that's really what we're doing. Like I had the pinky toe that would come up over the top of my other toe because it was getting bound inside the shoe. But now, like, I got like hobbit feet. They're like spread out and all that. So I am, again, just to echo everything you're saying right there, I have seen it. And it's crazy once you make the leap to think that you wear shoes that don't allow your feet to move freely now. Like you can't go back.
Yeah. That's one of the main motivations that I have by continuing to do this. I don't know if it'll ever get old. It really depends on how the world adopts this whole thing. What you experience, what you described, is what thousands of people that I personally have sold to and interacted with when I was in Israel selling at Barefoot Life in Tel Aviv. It's a store that does basically where I started this whole thing or it wasn't my business. That's where I started working with barefoot shoes directly and selling them to people and things like that. Is the same idea. It was a multi-brand store, and people would come in with their multitude of issues, or maybe they wouldn't even have issues. They've just heard it was good. But basically that business grew from word of mouth. It's a couple other factors besides that, but the owner did not have to advertise all that much because people would just hear from their friend or family that they were experiencing the things you were talking about, like, things that were sore and achy aren't anymore. And it's it's a rabbit hole with tons of information involved, but you don't have to go into the rabbit hole to experience it. Once you just give it a try, you have kind of a outlier story of someone who decided to take off their shoes and run. That I've heard that story from a couple people, but not many folks try that because it really is, for those who aren't brave, and I'm going to literally put that flat down, if you don't have some kind of adventurous brave side or some kind of side where you know that you're tougher than what the average person would say you should be, then things like that, just taking off your shoes and trying it for a run, it doesn't bother you to experiment. Some people, like, conceptually taking off your shoes outdoors seems like a terrible idea, either because, they're worried about the obvious things, getting glass in your foot, or because the doctors told them they always need support because their foot's kind of flat, or because their foot is too high of an arch, or just for whatever reason. And so it seems like a no-no. So the fact that you did it that way is kind of, it's one door to go into to get in, but all doors lead to, if you had a bad foot because you had a low arch and you use orthotics and things have been getting worse and worse over time, and you've tried everything and nothing's worked, and finally you heard maybe barefoot work, and that's how you got into that door, or you decided because it was starting to hurt running, or because your friend was telling you about it. There's all these doors that if someone decides to walk into this room and they stay in this room, because sometimes people will give up because their feet get a bit sore when they start walking with barefoot shoes. Because if you take a cast off of any body part, if I was wearing a cast on my shoulder for years and I started taking off that cast, it's going to be kind of hard to raise my arm over my head. And some people start to think, because it's sore to do that, oh, no, I got to put that cast back on. And it's the same idea with shoes. The same idea with the arch support. You can get rid of it. And people, unfortunately, doctors at this point don't encourage that enough, because it's just still not enough in the forefront. But this is exactly the kind of conversation that's happening, not just between me and you, between literally at this point millions of people, as just like conceptualizing, like, how the hell are people still wearing this crap, this Nike, this Hoka, this whatever? Once you get the truth in the door, that's it.
Yep. And I think what's interesting is, like, being in the gym, I see more and more people over the last few years moving towards this barefoot shoe. And when you're ready to make a change in your life for the healthy direction, you tend to look to a healthy person most of the time, right? Those people are going to be active, involved in some type of fitness. And so that's the hope, is that, people get this information. I'm hoping the people who catch this podcast will see something and at least give it a try. Don't do what I did. Like you said, full disclaimer, it was not the smartest way to go. But since then, my whole family made the jump. My wife had a knee injury that I have no doubt, and we've talked about it, had we been wearing barefoot shoes, the knee injury would never have happened. But it happened in traditional shoes. I say traditional, I hate to even say that, but like mainstream shoes right now.
Yeah,
playing basketball in the driveway, and I juked her. We had just got a basketball goal for the kids, like one of my least shining moments as a husband. Really good basketball moves, but
don't tell my wife. Just boom.
Yeah. I didn't dunk on her. I just gave her a little pump fake, and when I did, her knee went to the side, and she tore her ACL and meniscus. And so that's been, and it's still an injury she struggles with. The recovery from it, it's just constantly the issues that come along with a damaged joint. She's doing tons better, but in the barefoot shoes, we realized would never have happened, because her response time, right? If you look at it, that whole ledge of it, her whole body would have been able to react a fraction of a second quicker to bail out versus putting all that stress on the joint. But it was locked in, and it just, the mechanics of it, it's a disadvantage to be in mainstream shoes for injuries,
Yeah. So you're saying, like, she hyperextended her knee backwards and then out to the side?
It went to the side. It was a plant. And to the side, and stuck to the side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I if you look at
the common ways to tear the ACL,
Yeah. So, but since then she's done good, and the whole family's in barefoot shoes now, pretty much. And actually, you had one of our neighbors came over to see you over the weekend. I think they came to the store on Saturday.
Saturday?
Cassie, her and her kids all got pairs of shoes over there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then that makes a lot more sense, because she showed up, she got a pair of toe shoes, and then, then they kind of walk off, but then they came back like after 3 minutes, and they're like, you know what? Do you have sizes for the kids? It's like, of course we got sizes for the kids, and they just stocked up. They have the whole family barefooting now.
Yep, they're all in it.
Thank you for recommending.
Yep. Yeah, man. So and that's that's the cool thing about the store, and a great transition to kind of ask you about that. So one of the really unique things is in this barefoot realm, the only option for most people is to get online, start their research, and that's a really vast market, right, to get into, to try and figure out what's the best barefoot shoe for all those reasons. You have genius move. And what you've decided to do is to bring all of those things together. But what's awesome is I got a size 15. You carry size 15 all the way down to kid sizes. The whole family can make the transition at Always Barefoot. So what prompted the store here, man? And like, what's been the mission and the focus of what you're doing?
I just couldn't stop what I was doing in Israel. In Israel, it was the same thing. It really isn't my invention in any sense. Shachar Zen is the owner of the store in Israel. He has a very smart setup where he's an exclusive dealer for Vivo Barefoot and a couple other companies there. And he took a big step when he did that, because he himself had plantar fasciitis, and he tried Vivo Barefoot, and that essentially within a month he was able to get it cured up. Which, if you ask anybody about who has ever had plantar fasciitis, and you ask them, how would you feel if I told you you could get rid of this in a month? They would be like, sign me up. What do I got to do? Because plantar fasciitis takes a half a year to a year, and sometimes can be chronic and come back later. And I'm not saying that that's what happens with barefoot shoes, that in a month it goes away. That's definitely not the case. Sometimes it can even cause plantar fasciitis if you just jump straight into it. But anyway, I started at that store kind of as a happen chance. I met one of my best friends of this entire world on the train going to Tel Aviv, because I was taking care of some kind of errand that day. And he was also wearing toe shoes. And he was like, hey, what's up, man? High five. And he held up his foot, like to give me a high five. And I gave him a high five with my foot. And I kind of just didn't speak to him on that train ride, because a lot of times people who wear toe shoes are characters. And I was too much in my head at the time to meet a new character. But fortunately, I saw him again, and we sat next to each other and had a great conversation. And one thing led to another, where I had his number and talked to him and decided at a certain point that I needed a job. And that was one of the only, I think probably the only job where I sat down with Shachar, the owner of the store, and he asked me in the interview, okay, what do you want? Because I had been rocking toe shoes. I've run a marathon in toe shoes. I've been doing toe shoes for all my athletic stuff for, since 2011. And then I just finished my degree in Wingate, which again is the only institution in Israel that has anything to do with that kind of stuff. So I was just geared to be able to explain these things as well as speak from a point of perspective. And I just enjoyed working at that store so much. It was an hour and 15-minute commute one way, taking the train and using a bicycle to get to work every day. I would work 4 days a week, but I would show up in the morning and I'd work until the store closed. So the store would open at 10, close at 8. The hours were a little bit different in the beginning. It changed later, but went through the Black Fridays with them, which was just inordinate and inhumane. Just one thing you should know about Israelis, they are the warmest and most family-oriented and kindest bunch down to their core. But there's a huge issue with their education from an early age about manners and about being aware of other people. And so just as an example, when you're going on a train, and this is not just in Israel, there's other places in the world that has this kind of thing, sometimes even just in New York on the subway, but on the train, you have to push to get on the train. You have to fight. You will be fighting grandmas. It's not literally elbows, but you have to plant yourself. No one's going to look and see, oh, were you going first? People will come and they will cut you in line and say, oh no, I'm just going to ask the guy a question. And then they'll start getting service from the gentleman when you're standing in line to go somewhere. There's all kinds of crap like that, which for an American or someone who comes from Europe is insufferable. And the reason I'm mentioning this is at Black Fridays in the store in Israel, you can imagine with that kind of mentality, and you have the whole store, every square inch is full with people coming to get their good deal because it's the only place in the country you can come buy a barefoot shoe. I went to 3 or 4 of those with those guys, and the whole thing was fun. And when I came here, because I knew I just wanted to come back to the United States at some point, because I was kind of tired of Israelis to some degree, but also I just missed, being home and being back in America. And I didn't want to give up on this. I originally figured I was going to start studying for physical therapy. I even threw down $17,000 for schooling, for prerequisites to get into a master's program, because I already had my BA. So that means you can start your master's and become a physical therapist. But just doing even a few minutes, just a session or two of observation hours, which you do to get into physical therapy school. You have to have hours of observation where you watch physical therapists take care of people. It's hard to keep your eyes open. Everyone knows, everyone who's been through physical therapy, it's painful and boring at the same time. And if you're not on the side where you're actually trying to recover, it's just boring. if you're the physical therapist yourself and you have to use your imagination and help the person, I'm sure it's different. But like, it's just knowing the amount of good that Barefoot Shoes have been doing for all the people I've been helping and talking to and working with. It's like, I can't not try this. And when I met you, it was before I had opened the shop, and I was looking into potentially getting directly into a store, which probably in hindsight was good that I didn't do, because I was looking at places that would be cheap, but then just off the map. And then I would have had to completely rely on advertising to get people in the door, which who knows if that would have worked or not. But instead, I had my father, whose name is also Shachar, and then I also had Shachar, my old boss in Israel, and also had a business advisor who all three of them kind of pointed to and said, you should try more of a small setup, like a mobile thing. Try and do literal markets. And I think they were just thinking about a plastic table with like 10 pairs of, 10 models of shoes and, a minimal investment and just kind of show up and see how that would work. And that might have been an okay idea too, just to like test the market. But I just came I came from this place where I had all the models and all the things that I was offering people all the time from the store in Israel. So I didn't have it in me to reduce. So I have now like 90 different models, and I pack them onto a trailer, which you've seen, one per size, just smash that thing full. And I set up a whole floor and slat walls and a fan, and it looks like a freaking store on the outdoors. And
dude, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a way to kind of really hook, line, and sinker, throw a business out there. And it's been showing good results with mostly just walk by people just like, oh my gosh, a Barefoot store. And just like you said, I'm not sure if you meant, yeah, that's right. You mentioned like, it's hard to decide what model is for you, what company is for you, all this kind of thing. So when people finally see a store, or if they've just been hearing about Barefoot and they, never had really an inclination to try it because you need to order the shoe. And a lot of times when someone really needs a shoe, they kind of need it now. When it pops in your head, like, oh crap, my shoe's broken, or crap, I have this thing coming up, or whatever. It's like you just have it over with. So you're not going to wait for the shoe to get to you to try it on and figure out whether or not it's right for you and then send it back. It's just like, so people would just kind of forego giving it a try. And finally, when it's palpable, and even if people really wanted to, because I've had plenty of people come through and say, I've been waiting for years to try this, and I just kept on not pulling the trigger on it. And then now they finally had a spot to do it. That's glad I can put it out there for people.
Almost like an impulse buy, but it's the one that they know they needed to do. But you're enabling it. You're enabling the ability for people to connect with something that they know they should do. Because those seeds have been planted, right? Like my buddy giving me the info, those seeds are planted. This hopefully is going to plant some more seeds, and people will start to make the jump. So with that, the mission of what you're doing right now, man, it literally is changing the world. And it's cool to see, like, your whole journey started with a couple of train rides, right? Meeting your buddy and marrying the knowledge of what you had, and now understanding the market, the sales aspect, and driving to this. So I have no doubt that Always Barefoot's going to grow into to something huge.
Hope so.
Keep going. No, there's no hope in it, brother. It's happening. It is too cool. It's what Hawaii needs, and then it's what mainland needs. It's what the world needs is a place to be able to do this. Because without it, mainstream shoes, I think that's what we settled on calling it, right? Mainstream shoes, they even know, right? Their research even says what people should be wearing, but they can't make that change because then they're admitting that they're wrong, and everything else they have is wrong. And I don't see the big companies making a change until they're forced to. That's where, Vivo Barefoot, to see the millions of dollars they're generating, Zero. I still remember Zero. Did you ever see Shark Tank when Zero's owner went on there?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Mark Cuban was like, oh, this is a fad. I would bet money that Mark Cuban probably got a pair of minimalist shoes, or has at least tried them on since then. But they missed out. And it's what happens.
Well, who knows if they missed out? Because if those guys had suddenly been invested, it might have gone a completely different direction. They might have started making shoes that were a bit more mainstream. They might have said, no, that sole's too thin. No, that's too this, that's too that. And they would have started, like, what does Nike do? If they're making money, you're not going to, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If anything, right. As an anecdote, Nike Free was actually the first barefoot shoe. It was the first official barefoot shoe before the toe shoe is right around the same time, around 2005, and a lot of people liked it. Now, this is something that my buddy Archie, the guy I told you about on the train, he told me this story, and it makes a lot of sense, and I have repeated it, and I also can't find another explanation for it, in that the Nike Free, as it was in the beginning, they made it very barefoot. It was wide, and it was flexible, and all that good stuff. And they stopped making it completely for a while, even though it was popular and people liked it and were looking for it, because it began to cannibalize on their other products. Essentially, what would happen is when people would, just like we were talking about, get used to wearing that shoe and then try and use another one of Nike's awful products, then they would feel pain and they would feel like this is not comfortable, and they would go back to that shoe, so they wouldn't buy the rest of their stuff. And so people would just be buying that one thing, and they wouldn't create their collection of Nikes, the way that Nike likes to do. And I'm sure that all their high brand name shoes at the same time. I don't know how they make all them. They have a system that's working, and when you mention them being forced to change something, I don't think they'll ever be forced to change something. My thought is, and it already is happening, companies like Morel are making, barefoot shoes. There's Reebok, the what's it called? New Balance Minimus, for example. I've never tried the Minimus. I don't know how it feels, but that's probably going to be the more natural order of things. As this grows and there's more and more money in it, because the market is starting to, the companies will just integrate it. They'll start, making a few models, and for them, of course, it's peanuts. They'll be able to make crazy cool designs. They'll be able to make, they'll be able to reduce the price. They'll be able all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a range, make a low price to a higher price, and that'll increase a lot more awareness to the market. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects current barefoot brands, because if Nike and them do that, it might even increase the revenue of these other companies, because suddenly all the people from Nike and them start using those shoes and say, well, these are great. And then they start looking in that direction a bit more, and they start picking and choosing from other companies. And so it will shift the balance when that happens. And it really is a when. The question is just when. Will that when occur?
Right. Yeah. No, I think those are very solid points. And yeah, I hope the shift does happen, and I hope as it does happen that Always Barefoot continues to grow into that space, because it's, man, you just created something so cool, man. And I was so excited to have you on this, just so people can understand your brain and a little bit about your background and why you're doing it. Again, I know it's going to drive a lot of people to take that look. So with that, is there any way people can connect and buy online right now through you, or is that a coming thing?
Yeah, no, it's already have an e-commerce website. It's www.allwaysbarefoot.com, just as it's spelled here, ALLWAYS, and then be barefoot like no shoes. The online store, I, of course, would massively appreciate anyone who wants to patronize my business. However, at this point in time, I always like to point out to people, because a big part of the whole campaign is that I want people to try barefoot shoes. If I don't have a model that looks nice to you, or I don't have your size and whatever you wanted, remember that each of the companies that I retail have a massive selection. They have things that I don't have in stock, and you should look into what they have and find what's right for you, so that you will use it often. Because if you find a style that you will use for 10 hours at work and it wasn't in my store, do your research, look around, find the thing that is going to make you want to transition. Because part of it is that it looks good. Second, of course, that it's comfortable. The best thing that I can offer at this time, and what I'm going to continue to try and offer in the future, is the physical presence to come try anything on. So if you know anyone in Hawaii, if anyone's listening is on Oahu or coming to visit, and you have some time, come on down. Hopefully in the next few months, I'll actually be getting into a real store, so I'll have some air conditioning for you. It won't just be outdoors and at the swap meet, but that's also a nice place to visit regardless.
Yeah. So that's so for right now, until that storefront does come, which it will come, and I'm gonna be the dude that comes over and annoys you probably weekly.
You never annoy me.
You got, man.
You don't annoy me.
But,
absolutely.
So Aloha Market at the Aloha Stadium is takes place
Aloha Stadium swap meet.
Aloha Stadium swap meet. So Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays right now. Am I getting that right?
Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sunday.
Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. All right. My wife would remember. Sure. She always tells me, hey, no, we can't go today. It's closed. But
we'd be lost without our wives. That's 100%.
Yeah, 100, definitely agree with you on that one. But so Wednesday, Saturday, and Sundays, if you're in Oahu, definitely got to stop by Always Barefoot. And while you're out there, it's a great spot for, the souvenirs for other people as you're visiting Hawaii if you're out here, and a great opportunity to try on. I mean, when I say the selection that is never seen, I've never even known some of the companies that you carry, and I've researched hours on end the barefoot market. So you found some awesome stuff. There's stuff for every single day. There's stuff you can wear to work. I've worn yours. I've worn to conferences with khakis. The pair you got me, man, they look phenomenal. And everybody was asking, oh, where'd you get those? So man, love what you're doing, brother. So with that, you mentioned the storefront. What's next? What's that next big goal? Because I know you're a goal-oriented person. You're not just sitting where you're at right now. You're looking for that next thing. What are those next goals you're trying to get after?
The next goal is indeed the store. I'm also almost done with producing the first round of the cruiser, my new shoe. So I'll be trying to get that up on Amazon. Beyond that, I have another product that's pretty much ready. I just need to just finalize the funding for that. And then that's going to be some toe spreaders with little inserts, things like that. At the same time, I'll probably be trying to get my cruiser into stores around the island so that I'll be able to increase the exposure and increase the obviously revenue that I can get on the side, that people will be able to get barefoot shoes in other places and kind of happen by it. Got a couple fishing lines out in multiple different places, but the most important one to me is indeed the store. If I can get a store that has a good location, the most major thing for me is the store. If I can get myself into a good position where I can be in front of good walk-by traffic and with good parking and not way too expensive, then that's basically the main factor right now.
Very cool. Very cool, man. Well, I'm always keeping my eyes open. So if I see a space, I'll send you something, man. Especially if I can get it close by so I can check out the models. See what else you got.
I know this place down here by the commissary.
Man, there's a need for it, brother. So you're changing the world in a positive way, and people are going to be experiencing a whole different level of health and activity. So it's really cool to see. The pair of shoes you put on somebody can potentially change their activity level, right? Can potentially change what they get themselves into, the memories they make, man. So it really is foundational, not to be cheesy. It's foundational, and I think you're doing an awesome thing, brother. So check out alwaysbarefoot.com. And you've also got some YouTube, right? Some YouTube videos. Is that also Always Barefoot?
That is, yeah. Just Always Barefoot, and trying to get a bit more out there, trying to be as informative as possible. You have me talking for trying to be as straightforward and interesting and entertaining when I can be, so it's palatable to watch, because I know that a lot of times just someone sitting talking to you can be a snore. So if you have time to check them out, then it condenses a lot of the information and what the benefits are of giving the whole subject a try.
Awesome. Well, I'll share those links as well, brother.
Thank you, Derek.
Again, Barak, absolutely outstanding. And with that, is there any final words, right? Yeah, you've got an amazing story, amazing background from being in the Israeli military, living over there, being exercise background, teaching people how to move their bodies correctly, understanding all that, now bringing that to a storefront where people can make the leap into Always Barefoot. What is the advice so far that you would give? What life advice would you give to the listeners, and or any mantras or anything like that, words of wisdom you would leave the audience with?
Attitude is everything. I mean, even when things suck, if you're, it's kind of like how Bob Marley would say, don't worry about a thing. Obviously, we all have worries, so that's not a practical thing to say. But while you're worried, if you can still try and keep a smile, or try and keep your head on your shoulders and put yourself in perspective of how bad it could be as opposed to where you are, it can keep you above water. And then, of course, when things are great, that just keeping that gratitude up is the number one thing you could do. It keeps you humble, and it keeps you present.
Awesome. I love it, man. Love it. Love it. I love, throw a little Bob Marley quote in there too. Love it. All right, Barak. Well, again, man, I appreciate your time. Time is the greatest gift we can give people. So I appreciate your time on this.
I got you, Derek.
I know it's gonna affect a lot of people. So thanks so much, brother, and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Good. Much love. Thank you for your time.
Love you, brother.